everybody.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Lights Out. I'm your host, Josh.
And I'm your host, Austin.
And I'm the producer, Daniel.
And boy, do we have a crazy one for you today.
This is a little bit out of pocket, too. It's like not exactly, we're not dealing with serial killers here. We're not dealing with paranormal here. We're kind of...
No satanic worship going on.
No satanic worship, but it's completely disturbing.
Yeah, it's going to make you question everything about what you want done with your body after you die. Because we're going to be taking a look at probably one of the most crooked morticians I've ever heard of, as well as this funeral home that he ran called the Lamb Funeral Home. And it's crazy because the more you dig into it, the more you start wondering how much of this really heinous shit was going on throughout the years. Because this is a multi-generational family business, and it seems like they started doing some sketchy shit pretty early on to make money, right?
Yep.
They're like, how can we nickel and dime even more?
And I'm wondering, just because of the lack of regulations back then, if this was going on even outside of this funeral home as well.
Right. It wouldn't surprise me. But it's actually pretty crazy because it's kind of this rabbit hole where at first you're like, okay, that's definitely weird. They're doing this to make money, but then it just seems to get more and more devious, and to the point where you're like, is this guy just straight up an evil murderer? Like, is he just... Because then and he almost runs it like a mafia.
Yeah.
Like a family mafia. It's wild.
And it's like no conscience, too, with like some of the stuff that he's doing. It seems like only someone who's pretty morally barren would be doing some of this stuff to people's loved ones, you know?
Yeah. It becomes very clear that the man, David Sconce, kind of seems like he has no soul. And he looks at the dead as just money and flesh. Like, it's just inanimate flesh. There's nothing there, which is true to a certain extent, but it's like, it's still not your call what you do to that, people's loved ones' bodies. Like, let that they are coming to you for a certain service, or, thinking you're going to treat their loved ones with respect. And David does absolutely the opposite of that, as we'll find out. It's pretty shocking. But this is the disturbing story of David Sconce in the Lamb Funeral Home. So to understand where we are today and understand where David Sconce ends up, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, so this story goes all the way back to the 1920s, when Charles Lamb founded the Lamb Funeral Home in Pasadena, California. The 1920s, man. What a time.
Yeah, the Roaring 20s.
The Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
This is the golden age of Pasadena, California. It was really starting to pick up with tourism. There was a winter resort for the wealthy. This is a beautiful place. Come enjoy the warmer weather. And
do you remember that when the 2020s started, people are like, it's gonna be the Roaring 20s, like we're gonna relive the 1920s, but just in the 20s. How wrong we were.
Certainly not the golden age of the 2000s by any means.
No.
Yeah, quite the opposite, actually. But the 1920s, different time period altogether. But this is when rich people and rich residents of Pasadena pass away, they were willing to pay top dollar for the best end-of-life care services, which I think a lot of us kind of saw this with a lot of our grandparents. I know with my grandparents, elaborate end-of-life services were something that they all wanted.
Yeah.
Minus one of my grandparents who, God bless her, just an absolute salt-of-the-earth human being who's just like, I don't want all that fancy stuff. I want to be cremated and scattered in the mountains.
Nice.
But my grandfather, her husband, on the other hand, completely different. He was like, I want the gold casket. I want, do it up. Like, I want this.
I want it to cost a house, the equivalent of a house. Yeah.
He's got like an 8-foot tombstone. Like, he went all in on it. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, my grandparents on my mom's side, they were both cremated, and they had pretty modest burial plots. which was nice. But still Catholic funerals, still did it up and everything with the coffin and whatnot. But yeah, it's like you get into the dollars there.
You can spend some serious money at the funeral home. It's actually crazy. I've last couple grandparents I've lost, I actually went to the funeral home and like sat through their little spiel, and they have quite the menu.
Oh yeah,
of services and like the add-ons and all sorts of crazy things. And it's a kind of a vulnerable place, right? Because you're mourning someone that you lost, and at the same time they're asking you to shell out big bucks.
Yep.
But kind of selling it in a way that makes you feel almost guilty if you don't, in a way. That's just like my own
like,
thought.
This person meant something to you, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like you want to give them, a proper send off.
Yeah.
So it's such an interesting dynamic there. But these services are often one of the most expensive things Americans will ever buy, if you believe that, along with a house, an education, and a car. So in the 20s, many morticians and funeral home directors were pushing to be seen as respected professionals and community members alongside doctors, as opposed to creepy people that deal with the dead, right?
Yeah.
And many of the businesses were family owned and operated. And I believe even to this day, I think a lot of funeral homes are family owned and operated, as they should be.
Yeah.
God forbid they all become corporate owned by Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, BlackRock owns
BlackRock,
all of our homes.
exactly. Hedge funds all own our funeral services. But by the 1950s, the Lamb family business was really going strong, man. Charles' son Lawrence took over, and the Lamb family often spent a lot of their free time inside of the funeral home, where they hosted family get-togethers. And it became known as a place of course, Christian family values, which we love, right? And their funeral business continued to grow over the decades. Many of the Lamb family members were highly respected in the community. Lawrence was also the president of the Pasadena School Board. It's a pretty big role. Mm-hmm. So he's, very upfront in the community. Everybody kind of knows him.
A distinguished man.
Right, especially amongst families, which good for business, right?
Yeah.
And in the 80s, Lawrence's daughter, Lorianne, and her husband, Jerry Sconce, became the new owners. Lorianne was described as bright and having movie star beauty. Jerry was known as a happy man who's also the football coach for the Christian University, Azusa Pacific University. And both were very dedicated to their faith, especially Lorianne. So, good church-going couple here. She would often slide biblical quotations into conversation and also wrote songs for her gospel group, the Chapel Bells. She was also known for her gift at consoling families at the mortuary, and some of the people she comforted would even give her money as a down payment for their future funerals. And it was clear to her father, Lawrence, that Lorianne was perfect person to take over the family business, along with her husband, Jerry Sconce. And while Lorianne and Jerry ran the business, their son, David Sconce, would end up running the cremation services. Cremations were not performed at the funeral home, but at the Pasadena Crematorium in Altadena. In the 70s, cremation had become much more popular. Nearly 40% of their clients requested cremations in the 1980s.
So it's important to see where David's coming from, too, because it's this family who is seen as a staple in the community and also as, church-going folks. So either that is what is being perceived or that's the reality of it. There might be something in the mix here. But we'll see where this goes off the rails a little bit. So cremations had actually risen in popularity because of a few things, and it's still rising in popularity to this day, but it was more affordable than a typical burial. The Catholic Church also lifted its cremation ban in 1963, and the change was then codified in 1983.
Yeah, that was a big thing, right?
Huge, yeah, because if you were a Catholic, you had to be just your body was put in the ground, classic funeral style. But and that's why, even my very Catholic grandparents were cremated. Because it was kind of just way more accepted as time went on. On the flip side of this, though, it's not just, Christian people, Catholic people who were doing this, but people like secular, less traditional option for end-of-life services. It was cheap. It wasn't, you didn't have to do anything related to the traditional functions of the church.
Right.
So it was just like, why not just cremate me? Do you want to be cremated when you're What do you want? What do you want?
You know, I go back and forth, but I think I think I would probably end up being cremated. And there's lots of ways to utilize your ash. You know, you can become a tree, you can become, there's, as we'll talk about this more later, but there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of me doesn't like the idea of being embalmed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then just putting myself in a wooden or metal box in the ground.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to return to the earth rather than poison it, with my remains.
Yeah.
You know? It's like when you're gone, you're gone. And I think that's probably what I'd choose. What about you?
I think I'm cremation all day as well. Yeah. And the fact that we were saying you can scatter it, you can bury some of it in like a traditional plot too.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And you can go with your family.
Right. Yeah.
You can't.
Exactly.
Once you're buried, you're put in the ground.
Yeah, they're not going to start.
They're not going to dig you back up and then move you to another cemetery if they move, right?
Yeah, you could put an urn in a house and it not be weird. You can't just store somebody's body in your house.
Although people have done it.
True. Psycho. But yeah, he's keeping his mom around, dressed in her clothes. Yeah. But I think cremation all day. I think, Daniel, what about you?
I want to be turned into Soylent Green.
I like that.
I'm kidding. I want to be cremated.
I like that. Or cryonics.
What's cryonics?
Yeah.
Suspended animation. That's another option.
Frozen,
which I think will become more and more popular as time goes on. Technology advances of like the idea that, you know, you could preserve your body and then be brought back to life with technology later on.
Yeah.
So like we get to the point where we could download our consciousness to a computer, to a file. The idea is that you could preserve the body, which at that point, I guess you'd probably just get like a cyborg type situation going on.
Upload me to
upload you to like
body.
a new lab grown body.
Yeah.
And live that way. But that's just all like insane
sci-fi.
To me. Yeah. I don't like that idea.
My only thing with cryogenics and stuff is that they're all run by these companies, and it's like, what if the company goes under? What do they do with all the bodies? Like, what if they go bankrupt? Do they have a fail-safe plan where it's like, okay, we get bought out? Hopefully, I don't know, because I think some of them guarantee it's like we'll keep you on ice for like 200 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So that kind of worries me. It's like, who then controls my body after like 100 years and they go bankrupt? I have no idea.
I mean, who's going to complain?
Yeah, true.
How do you know?
Yeah.
This episode of Lights Out's brought to you by our good friends over at Wild Grain, making the best carbs on the planet, literally.
Yes.
It's an experience, man. There's no way else to put it.
Just give me more, please.
They're dangerously good.
Yeah. And, everyone's like, you got to stay fit. You got to cut the carbs. You know what? If you're going to do carbs, because everyone deserves cheat meals, right? You got to do Wild Grain. That should be your cheat.
Yeah. I mean, it's fresh carbs.
Yeah.
This is made in a kitchen with love and care, and it tastes like that. I mean, this is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, seasonal pastries, and fresh pastas. All items conveniently bake in 25 minutes or less. And unlike store-bought, Wild Grain uses a slow fermentation process that's easier on your belly. I have a sensitive gut.
Do you?
Yeah, I've learned that over the years that like my stomach gets upset real easy.
I have like an iron gut, but I realize that's not actually a benefit like you think it would be. Because it just means I can load my body with a bunch of disgusting crap.
Before you feel like crap. Yeah. Well, Wild Grain's goods are richer in nutrients and antioxidants, and they're made with simple ingredients that you can actually pronounce. We love Wild Grain. They just recently sent us their fall box sampler, and my God, everything in it was absolutely amazing, especially their apple cider donuts and pumpkin cinnamon biscuits.
Oh my God.
Talk about a way to wake up in the morning.
Oh man.
Oh, and you know what else they have now? They have the best, it's like maple crusted Belgian waffles.
Oh.
It's made with a dough rather than a batter.
Oh my God.
So it is the most, oh my God, I couldn't believe it's like eating cake. It's
so man.
Good. You have one and you're like, oh my God, that was the best waffle I've ever had.
And a cup of coffee.
Oh
man.
So good.
Oh.
So good. And of course, they always have the best croissants, especially for this time of year. We absolutely love Wild Grain, and we know you will too. So this fall, treat yourself and your loved ones to warm sourdough breads and seasonal baked goods from Wild Grain. Rumor has it they have apple cider donuts and pumpkin cinnamon biscuits, so get them before these seasonal items sell out. You need to get these, trust me.
Absolutely. For a limited time, Wild Grain is offering our listeners $30 off the first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/lightsout to start your subscription. That's right. You heard me. Free croissants in every box and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/lightsout. That's wildgrain.com/lightsout, or you can use promo code lightsout at checkout. Don't miss their seasonal products.
No, don't. Get them now.
But yes, cremation. It's a pretty efficient way to do things. And people also like the idea of keeping a family member's remains nearby, if they have to move across the country, because when you're buried in a plot and you move to a different state, if you want to visit them, quote unquote, visit them, you have to go back. On top of this, people also realize that, like we were just saying, it's way more environmentally friendly since it didn't involve putting as many non-biodegradable materials in the ground, like we were saying, including, those nasty embalming chemicals that are used. And now people also like this idea of the personalization of things like urns, or being able to load the ashes into fireworks and blow them up, or you can even like press your ashes into vinyl, which I think I would probably do that.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Or you can make like coral reefs out of your ashes too.
You know what's really cool that I saw, which Danny, you would like this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new service where your loved ones can take your tattoo. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Where they will remove your tattoo from your skin and then preserve it in like artwork for your loved one, which is cool.
That's cool.
So you could be like, honey, which tattoo do you want to have? If I go before you, you basically send it to there's a couple companies that do it, then they basically take off the skin of the tattoo, but they do it in a way it sounds weird and creepy, but the way that it turns out is actually really cool. And they put in this nice frame thing, and it doesn't look like a piece of skin. It just looks like this nice tattoo that's there, but it's actually your loved one.
Wow,
which I kind of like that idea, because it's cool. Like, it's not just ash. It's something that you can look at as a reminder every day, and you remember it being on their body. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Cool. I was imagining like a human pelt on the wall, and he'll kind of just
this isn't Ed Gein here. It's a really cool service that I've randomly ran across it and inquired about it, and I was like, and they can do whole sleeves.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's not that as expensive as you think. So they can do a whole sleeve. They can even do a bodysuit. Which I'm like, how the hell does that work?
What? That's with a human pelt idea. That would seem like a human pelt.
How weird would that be?
Sleeve? You'll turn me into a lampshade or something.
Just have like a mannequin in your house of like skin.
Just taxidermy me.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it, but even like the pricing for a full bodysuit, I think they were charging like $17,500.
Oh my God.
So for like small like if you want to just do like a little tattoo, it wasn't that much. It was like less than $1,000 to do it. Which I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Huh.
So that's something you can work into your will with your significant other. Nice. What tattoo you want.
Nice. Well, I don't have any tattoos because I'm trying to go to heaven.
You're trying to keep that temple clean, pure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy, all the end of life services, and it makes sense. It is a big deal because death is finite and it happens to us all. So it makes sense that we have all these ways to kind of preserve our loved ones in different ways. And cremation specifically continues to be more popular year over year. And the National Funeral Directors Association, also known as NFDA, projects that by 2030, cremation rates will top 70%, which
doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. Back in the 80s, this boom was just beginning, and David Sconce was taking full advantage of it. So let's get into David. Who was David? Growing up, he was kind of known as a model youth. He also played a defensive back for his team that his father coached, but his football career came to an end in college when he apparently, according to him, he stepped into a gopher hole and damaged his knee. Some other accounts said that he tore his ACL or something, but according to David, he stepped in a gopher hole. Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So I'm like, where was that? Was that just like in the yard? Or is that on the football field?
How did you not see?
Yeah.
Why are you not paying attention? I don't know what's going on. This is like Caddyshack. He just has a huge gopher hole right there.
He must have really messed up his knee though.
Yeah.
To like not be able to repair it to come back. Because I mean, NFL players tear their ACLs and Achilles all the time.
Right.
They'll come back a year later
or something. Yeah. Part of me thinks David's a little bit of a liar and he just took this injury as an excuse to stop playing football. That's my take on it. I don't know. But although he was once considered a model youth, David wasn't as perfect as he portrayed himself to me, and he had gotten into trouble with the law. And he actually broke into an ex-girlfriend's house when she broke off their relationship, because that's a completely normal way.
Very rational. Yeah.
He even stole some of the stereo equipment that was inside the home. After being caught, he didn't serve any jail time. After he returned the stereo equipment, they said, okay, we're good, which sounds a bit of privilege going on here, you know. Awkwardly, he would then join his ex-girlfriend's family in their pew at church every Sunday after that. He was often seen hanging around his friend group of ex-football players who he called his boys. And they would often go to hockey games too, where he would brag about his life success. He would also get some of his boys to run errands for him and rough up his rivals. His boys eventually gave him the nickname Little Hitler.
Which is a nickname nobody wants to have.
No, yeah. And it's either, if that's a nickname of endearment, your crowd that you're hanging out with, it's probably
seriously questionable.
Questionable. Or that's a straight up insult because they don't like you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, initially, David never saw himself taking over the family business, but after his gopher hole accident, his family suggested that he go to Cypress College and get his mortuary certification. And David was described by his ex-wife, Barbara Hunt, as funny, big as life, and having a beautiful family. When they first began dating, she said, quote, I was very infatuated, fell in love right away. They had met at the mall where Barbara was selling suits. And what was odd was that on the day of their wedding, David's grandfather and grandmother, Lawrence and Lucille, both asked Barbara if she was certain about the marriage. Even David's father, Jerry, told Barbara that, hey, you can still back out of the wedding if you want. But that's crazy, right? That's insane.
The groom's family's like, are you sure you want to marry this guy?
Man, we know David.
Do you know what his friends called him?
Yeah, right. But despite the warnings, she married David anyway. I mean, I get it. Maybe those conversations, I mean, shame on the family for bringing those conversations up the day of the wedding, too.
Who's going to do that? Like, who's going to be like, actually, I'll bail.
Maybe I'll back out now. Those conversations should have been had months and months earlier, but I don't know. Reportedly, Lawrence Lamb once told his daughter, Lorianne, that her son David would ruin the family name. And,
well,
he would be proven right.
Yeah. Well, David, he later became the president of Coastal Cremations Incorporated. His business was mostly a wholesaler to other mortuaries, and he only charged 55 buckaroos for cremation. At the time, that was less than half of what the other competitors were charging. He also didn't charge extra for picking up a body or returning the ashes to the family. Meanwhile, other funeral homes would charge anywhere between $265 to $1,000 per cremation. The two ovens David used at the crematorium in Altadena were the oldest furnaces west of the Mississippi.
Yes.
Wow.
Funny.
What a line.
Yeah.
And they ran 16 to 18 hours a day. According to his family and friends, David was the mastermind behind the assembly line of cremations. His operations were so efficient that he began offering his cremation services to other funeral homes around 1982. The Pasadena crematorium that he used was on the property with the Mountain View Mortuary and Cemetery. At the time, owner Jay Brown recalled that David seemed like a nice fella. Early on, David bought an old Dodge van. He removed the back seats and then drove around Southern California, picking up bodies from all over, and then he'd haul them back over to the crematorium. And like we mentioned earlier, he only charged $55 for his services. This included the cardboard boxes that held the bodies, fuel for the furnaces, as well as the cremation itself. And he even dropped off the ashes for that one price of $55. How do you compete with that? I mean, that is like a deal.
Yeah.
That is a deal. Jay Brown remembered when David would only burn a few bodies a day, but quickly, this number went up into the dozens. According to David, his business grew overnight, and he started hiring his friends who were former football players to go and collect more bodies.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I need help. Because he's got this insane deal.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's a business move. You know, he's not thinking about the family members right then and there with that kind of deal.
No, he's thinking about the money.
And it's in, I guess, maybe people questioned him. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they're just like, but like the next closest deal is $265. So to undercut it by that much, I don't know. I feel like it would raise eyebrows. You'd be like, what? $55?
It does eventually raise eyebrows, thankfully. But I think people were just so caught up in like, oh, we can get this sweet deal. And you kind of just shut your eyes and say, okay, we're shipping the bodies off to David and not questioning it. Because later on, there will be some questions put forward even to these other funeral homes where it's like, how did you not know something fishy was going on with the prices and efficiency here? How did you not know? So we'll definitely be diving into that. But so David's hiring all these guys, big guys, to, you got to be able to be strong enough to lift these bodies up and then place them into the crematorium chambers. But David's right-hand man was Johnny Daniel Polarana from North Pasadena. Not much is known about his background, but he was affiliated with gang activity from a young age, and he was in and out of prison for most of his adult life. He also struggled with substance abuse issues, but the crematorium was one of the first consistent jobs he had ever gotten, and one of his cousins, who had been working at a cemetery in the 80s, he ended up introducing Johnny to David Sconce, and soon after, David hired him to work as the driver and cremator for his business. Reportedly, David was eventually paying Johnny in pretty big lump sums of cash, about $6,000 a month. So Johnny was willing to do basically whatever the job required since he could finally provide for his family. By Johnny's own admission, he was using some of the money he made to buy crack. He even admitted to being high while cremating some of the bodies. He said that being high often helped him with burning the bodies, but other times it would be spooky. And he'd imagine some of the bodies would start to move.
Smoking crack and burning dead bodies, I think that's going to be a really weird situation there.
Boy. Early on, while David first trained him, it was clear Johnny knew what had to be done, and he was the only employee that David trusted with cremations at that time. Over time, David became close friends with Johnny, and they would go down and swim in the river, get a bite to eat. Meanwhile, the business quickly picked up. Fleets of vans, station wagons, and trucks grew, and David was soon cremating bodies from all over Southern California. According to Jay Brown, the cremation process typically takes about 2 hours for one body. A little bit of math coming up, but the furnace chamber, it needs a while to cool down before the ashes can then be safely removed. With 2 chambers, David and Johnny should have been able to do about 8 cremations in an 8-hour workday. Yet, they were often seen unloading dozens of bodies at the crematorium every single day. So the math just wasn't adding up here. In David's first year of business, cremations increased from 194 in 1981 to 1,675 in 1982.
Insane.
It's a huge jump.
Over 1,000% increase. It's just like, what?
Crazy.
How did nobody see this? Like, what?
I think people did see this.
And they're just like,
whatever. Because I'm like,
certainly his parents, Jerry and Lorianne.
Come on, guys.
Come on.
You were looking at the numbers.
Yes.
You're like, this doesn't make any sense, right?
So like, just if you calculate that out, like at $55 a pop times 16, so is that just curious, like just off the cremation.
$92,000.
So $92,000, which, back in 1982 is probably a lot more than that.
Yeah,
with inflation.
Inflation calculator, probably quite a bit. Should we look that up?
Yeah, I'm just curious, like how much money that was. Because going from 194, that's not a whole lot.
What was it, 92,000?
Mm-hmm. A little over 92,000.
Yeah, so going from 10,674 the prior year in cremation cost to over 90,000. That's crazy. That's a lot of money.
92,000, did you say?
A little over 92,000.
Okay, we'll just do. Yeah, that's $308,000 in today's money in a single year.
Yeah,
and it doesn't stop there. That is just the first year
charging the $55 per body.
Right? Yeah. Let alone, you think about they're also running the funeral home business, which also has its own income.
Yep.
So we're making some big money here. His parents, Jerry and Lori Ann, had given him complete control over the crematorium by now, and David had begun putting 2 to 3 bodies in a single furnace at a time. Already we're in, this is a problem, right?
Ethically, at the very least, this is a problem.
Yeah. And under the state health and safety code, this is also a misdemeanor to cremate more than one body at a time. His right-hand man, Johnny, said, quote, David made everything seem quite normal. Everything. A witness recalled David saying, what difference does it make? They're dead. And I think that mentality he carries through
sure.
to this day.
Yes.
He still has this mentality.
No, he doesn't see a big deal with it because he's like, they're dead.
Yeah. You're just meat, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What does it matter? Ash is ash.
Yeah.
Another sponsor that Austin and I absolutely love and we use all the time is ZocDoc. If you're not familiar with ZocDoc, you must be living under a rock. Because ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. What a convenience.
I actually have a confession to make. It's not anything medical. I keep up a tab open of ZocDoc on my computer 100% of the time.
You're ready to go.
It's open.
Yeah.
It's windowed in its own window. I'm like, because I know I'm going to use it soon.
He's got it open, ready to go, loaded up with his insurance in there. So he knows exactly which providers take his insurance and he can get an appointment as soon as just 24 to 72 hours. And sometimes you can even score a same day appointment, which that is unheard of in this day and age, it feels like. But ZocDoc makes it happen. And it's such an easy process. Once you book that appointment, usually the doctor's office will then email you some paperwork if they need, some preliminary forms filled out, and confirm your appointment. It's super easy. There's no waiting on hold. There's no just Googling for hours and hours looking for a doctor only to find out that they are not taking patients, that they don't take your insurance, or you, God forbid, you show up for that appointment, you take work off, and then you get to the counter and they're like, can I see your insurance card? And they tell you then, we don't take your insurance and you're paying out of pocket. I mean, ZocDoc is just a no-brainer for looking up any type of medical professional. We're talking even therapists, psychiatrists, acupuncturists. I mean, there's every medical specialty you can think of on there, dentists, oral surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, whatever you need, ZocDoc will help you find a patient-reviewed professional to take care of whatever ailment you've got going on. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/lightsout to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today.
That's ZocDoc.com/lightsout. ZocDoc.com/lightsout. As time went on, they were eventually placing 10 to 15 bodies into a single oven.
That's just disturbing to think about. They're piling people on top of each other and then incinerating them.
Yeah. And Johnny said, you make the bodies fit the way they can.
So they're doing human Tetris in the crematorium on the daily to fit as many people into there. And just to remind you too, this is not just all like people who lived full, 90-year lives, elderly. This is men, women, and children, infants, babies. They're piling them all in there.
Yeah.
Which when you think about it that way, it is so much more disturbing, I feel like. But one of David's other employees was Andre Augustine, a poor ex-college football player who was living with his parents, and he needed a job. So he started driving the crematorium truck 3 days a week, and he said he almost threw up on his first day. The back of his truck had no ventilation, and he had to haul multiple bodies a day.
Oh.
When he witnessed the cremation process, he watched as David and Johnny would break an arm, a collarbone, or a leg just to get as many bodies as they could possibly fit into that oven.
Dude.
Oh, God. David loved trying to show off his strength and masculinity. So what he'd do is he'd put on a show where he would heave dead bodies inside cardboard boxes like they're sacks of grain, according to a former employee. So he's just like slaying them around like this, just walking around the crematorium under his arms.
Almost having fun with it, too.
Yeah.
You know?
According to a businessman, David once looked him up and down and called him a one-hander, meaning that he could pick him up with one hand and sling his dead body over his shoulder. According to Andre, there is also a running competition between David and Johnny on who could load the most bodies into an oven at one time. According to Johnny, David made it all seem like a joke, like it was no big deal. But when interviewed in the 2025 docuseries, which is very good, by the way, highly recommend you watch it after this, if you can, The Mortician, David saw no difference between burning one body at a time and 10. He argued that no cremator could ever get all the ashes out of a furnace before they put another body inside. As he put it, quote, "The commingling of ash is not a big deal. I don't put any value in anybody after they're gone and dead, as they shouldn't when I'm gone and dead. It's not a person anymore." That attitude is an outlook is just wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. And also, if you want to have that outlook, fine, whatever. Don't do this as your job.
Yeah.
If you can't respect the human remains in this capacity, don't do this.
No. It's just like people are trusting you with their loved ones' remains and thinking they're getting their loved ones' ashes back, but that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
And you try to be like, well, they don't get it. Even if they do one body at a time, they're not getting all of it. There's going to be remnants of it, which I don't really know the cleaning process of the ovens, but
I don't know either. But that is a good example of how David kind of defends himself, and he'll kind of just convince himself that it's no different. It's no different. Burning 20 bodies at a time, it's the same thing as, oh, you can't really get all the ash, even if you just do one at a time, which is a crazy comparison to make. But this is how David operates. This is how he defends himself to this day.
And this next quote lends to my feelings that he doesn't have a soul, because he just argued that ashes are all the same and said, people just have to be in control of their emotions because that's not your loved one anymore, and it never has been. Love them while they're here, period. It's like, yeah, but that's your own personal opinion.
Yeah.
Most people don't share that same opinion.
No, none of the people who were agreeing to this share that opinion.
No, nobody signed up for this.
Yeah.
So he uses this logic throughout his entire career to degrade thousands of bodies at his crematorium. Johnny said David made the process seem like it wasn't nasty, scary, or spooky, or ugly. He made it seem like it was just part of the job. Johnny began to believe that this is just disposing of the rotten meat. The soul is gone anyway. Which again, just your own personal outlook.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody shares that same outlook. And again, you're not getting consent to do what you're doing. Right? It's against the rules, right? At the very least. The obvious question remained, though. How did Johnny and David know which ashes returned to which family members? Well, to nobody's surprise, they didn't know. An employee named Jim Dame worked at the rear of the Lamb Funeral Home, which got the nickname Ash Palace. Jim had to sift the ashes from the transport trucks in big barrels. So he's just carrying around barrels of mixed ash.
Yep. They would just burn a bunch of bodies, dump them all in these huge barrels, transport them back to the funeral home, and then they would have to go through them there.
Yeah. According to him, David's father, Jerry, told him to put 3.5 to 5 pounds of ash in an urn if the deceased was a female. If they were a male, they were ordered to put 5 to 7 pounds of ash in an urn. And he said that at no point did he ever put the ashes from just one body into the urns that were later returned to family members.
Not once.
Yeah. Not once. That's wild. They're just scooping who knows whose ash into urns and giving it back to the families, telling them it's their loved ones' remains.
Yeah. Which everyone wants to look at David, and I think David is like the scariest person here. But I think everybody really is guilty to some degree. I think even the guy who's scooping up the ashes and then, obviously his dad, Jerry, tell him, hey, we divide them like this. And then the guy who's like, okay. Does nobody have a conscience here?
Yeah.
What's going on, man?
Well,
I think
I will say that the people that work for them have a little less responsibility because I think they're being manipulated by the Lambs and the Sconces, because I think they're being told from professionals who are, certified morticians that, oh, no, this is no big deal. This is fine.
Yeah.
And so I think they're kind of getting brainwashed into thinking like, oh, what we're doing is okay.
Sure.
Or maybe they're being told that's what the families wanted, or they signed off on this or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. They're taking money for this. At the very least, I think, come on, what you're doing is wrong.
Just a little bit of critical thinking, I think, would open your eyes. But yeah, many soon realized that it wasn't possible for David to be cremating that many bodies in such a small crematorium. Tim Waters, a rival cremation provider in his 20s, noticed David's cremations just weren't adding up. Tim owned the Alpha Society in Burbank, and he had a reputation for honesty, although he was pretty disliked by competitors because he aggressively took business away from other funeral homes. He offered low-cost end-of-life services, but he actually didn't have his own crematorium. So at one point, David was trying to get Tim Waters to pay for his cremation services, and reportedly, they had a meeting together. Tim came to the understanding that the only way David could offer such low prices was if he was performing what they call high-volume cremations, or illegal cremations.
Yeah. Mass burnings.
Yes. Yeah. And after that meeting, Tim began telling others in the industry that he didn't trust David's cremation business. So word is now out that something is fishy about David Sconce and his business. According to an anonymous source who is friends with Johnny and once helped him unload trucks at the crematorium, David got mad at Johnny for having one of his friends help him with the work, and he had become a bit paranoid that their operations were not being watched, that more of these rumors were spreading. But then David suddenly asked the man to put one of the bodies into the furnace, and after he showed David he was capable of doing that, David hired him and allegedly said, "If you ever fuck me, you're going to be my last burn."
Sounds like a threat.
Yep, he's willing to threaten people's lives here. According to the anonymous man, they were filling up 50-gallon trash cans with the ashes they produced. Do you know how big a 50-gallon?
Yeah, it's like big ass trash can. Yeah.
After some of the mass cremations, they sometimes filled up to 9 50-gallon trash cans at a time. David and his employees were also cutting off body parts, especially fingers, and then they were stealing the jewelry off of the dead. They would often collect rings from the deceased hands and collect them on wire hangers inside the crematorium. They also stole the deceased clothing and sold everything to make even more money. But so if you consider that, so we already did the math on it, it's like over $300,000 just from the $55 cremation. So now we're realizing that, okay, they're also getting jewelry, clothing, whatever, and then selling that. So we don't have the numbers on that, obviously, but tack that on, and we'll start to realize they're making even more money from these other things that they're doing to the body.
Yeah, they're like running a thrift store / pawn shop out of their crematorium.
Yep. But that is not all they were selling, because one day, David's then wife, Barbara, remembered David coming home with this little styrofoam cup that had the letters AU written on the side of it. She later found him in the garage with the cup, and this is what he was doing. He was cracking teeth with a hammer to extract bits of gold. If you know, AU on the periodic table is gold. He would then tell Johnny, "We're gonna pop chop," meaning he would extract the teeth from the bodies. And Johnny refused to do this, so David did it all himself. And one employee mentioned that David even used a crowbar to snap a body's jaw to get at the golden teeth. According to Andre, one of his employees, David made about $20,000 to $30,000 a month from the gold extracted from his victims. A former bookkeeper claimed it was more around $5,000 or $6,000. But I mean, if you calculate the inflation on that a month,
still, that's good money.
So we're pushing $500,000 here just with what we know. And then that's not even calculating the jewelry and the suits and everything. But according to David, he only extracted gold teeth if the family requested it.
Right.
This is a bold-faced
But didn't
lie.
give it to them.
Yeah. This is a straight up lie. He also allegedly referred to the operation as making the pliers sing.
Yeah, that's demented.
Yeah, it's just getting worse too, because you think it's already terrible that they're smashing the bodies in the crematorium, but it's just getting worse as it goes on.
They're starting to pretty much almost dismember the bodies by using crowbars to crack jaws. And oh, God. Are you tired of wasting money and paying for subscriptions that you knew nothing about, or you just forgot about because they were from like 4 years ago? Nothing's worse.
Yeah, it's a bad feeling.
You have a sinking feeling in your gut because you're like, I just was spending all this money. I didn't even know about it, and I haven't used this in 4 years.
Yep. Rocket Money, they'll let you know. They're like, hey, you forgot about this one, and because your memory is like a city dump, so we'll remind you.
We're here for you.
Yeah.
Rocket Money does it all. It's a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel those pesky unwanted subscriptions, but it also does so much more, like monitors your spending. It even helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. We love Rocket Money. I love it, especially because it's like a dopamine hit in the morning when you look at your finances and you see everything trending upward,
Cha-ching.
right? Yeah, and you just feel good knowing that your finances are organized because you can load all of your accounts into your Rocket Money. It will alert you when your bills are coming out. It'll alert you if your bill went up in costs in comparison to prior month, which is actually really nice because maybe your electric bill is like $200 more and you're like, what was my roommate doing this month?
Yeah, did he get a hot tub?
Yeah,
what's going on?
Yeah, is there a hot tub I don't know about? I mean, it's nice for visibility. It's great for helping you organize your bills, but then you can use Rocket Money they'll go a few taps, cancel some of those subscriptions for you. They'll also, if you upload a utility bill or they'll scan your account and tell you which bills they can negotiate a lower rate for you. And then you just give them some info and they'll go out and try to get you a lower rate. So if you feel like you're paying too much for your internet, maybe Rocket Money can go and help negotiate a lower monthly cost for you. There's over 5 million members, including ourselves, who use Rocket Money. So no better time. They've saved a total of $500 million, which is absolutely insane to think about, and just cancel subscriptions with this service, with members saving up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. It's a no-brainer. We use it. You should too. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Just go over to rocketmoney.com/lightsout today to let them know that we sent you.
That's rocketmoney.com/lightsout. rocketmoney.com/lightsout.
And with all the money he was making, David openly flaunted his wealth, like buying everyone a round of beers at the bar or offering people food. And he soon became known as the cremation king of California. When his cremation services business really took off, he was often seen flashing wads of cash. He also began driving around a red Mercedes-Benz and a white Corvette with a vanity plate that said, I BRN for you. Yep. I burn for you.
Yep.
David also bought Johnny a Chevy Camaro IROC. He also bought another anonymous employee a Chevy truck. So that's the kind of money he's throwing around. He's just out buying vehicles.
Cars.
Yeah. A Mercedes-Benz. It's kind of wild that he's doing all this. And he's even like bold enough to put like a vanity plate on his Mercedes, and it's just like
no shame.
No shame whatsoever. David also fly out to Las Vegas with his brother-in-law at the time, Brad Sallard. Brad also worked for the family funeral home business, and they considered these extravagant trips out to Vegas as business meetings, right? Meanwhile, rival Tim Waters was still looking into David and his cremations. While David's business quickly grew, so did the rumors throughout the funeral home industry. As you could probably imagine, everybody's like, how is this guy balling out so much?
Mm-hmm.
We make decent money, but we're not this rich. What's going on here? At one point, an editor of a newsletter called Mortuary Management, Ron Hast, whose mortuary also used David's crematorium, asked Lorianne Sconce to put down in writing in 1984 that her cremations were done individually. This threat of a bad article upset her so much that it made her cry. And David, well, he was super angry after this, and he said he was going to have his boys pay the editor a visit. These were David Edwards, Danny Galambos, and Andre Augustine. Again, all big guys, former football players that David knew. And he even gave his boys business cards that said Big Men Unlimited on them.
Oh my God. Cringy too.
Yeah. He's like running his own little gang.
Yeah, he is.
Ron Hast and a friend were later attacked by the men posing as police officers. They threw ammonia and jalapeno sauce in their eyes, and one of David's boys, David Edwards, later pleaded guilty to the assault. And he testified that David had paid him $700 or $800 to do it. David also got Danny Galambos, a 245-pound ex-football player, and another man to assault Tim Waters, which is the man who's looking into David's crematorium ethics. On February 12, 1985, these guys showed up at Tim's office late at night and brutally attacked him. They also stole some jewelry to make it look like a robbery. David used physical violence to intimidate the competition and the rumor mill, but Tim Waters wasn't going to let up. He knew there was something fishy going on about David's cremation business. 2 months after the assault, Tim Waters just suddenly died. He had allegedly gone out to a restaurant with David and felt sick soon after, but other reports claim that Tim had been feeling ill for several days, and reportedly he died of a heart attack at age 24, which that's very, very young.
That's really young.
It happens. It's rare.
Yeah.
But it's also weird that it happens right after going to dinner with David, right?
Yeah.
So obviously people are thinking this has got to be foul play. And obviously he was pretty much last seen with David Sconce. David, of course, defended himself, saying that Tim was a very large man who was bound to die. He weighed about 300 pounds, and David also claimed that the meeting with Tim Waters was completely innocent, of course. He loves to do this. He loves to just be like, I'm going to outsmart you, basically. You think it's me, here's why it's not me.
Yeah.
And he comes up with some excuse.
Yep, always. By 1985, David's cremations had surpassed 8,000. So we were in, it was like 100 something at first, and then it was
1,600.
Like 1,600. We are at 8,000.
That is just like hard to wrap your head around.
And by 1986, the year after that, he reportedly cremated 25,285 bodies in a single year. That is about 70 bodies every single day, without counting weekends.
Yeah.
That is 70 bodies every day. Johnny could barely keep up with the number of bodies brought to the crematorium, but soon the operations would stall because on November 23rd, 1986, Johnny was running the crematorium with another employee, and Johnny and the employee took a break to apparently get high, and then they dozed off. While they slept, they forgot to shut down the two furnaces where they had packed 38 bodies inside.
That's crazy.
This was the most they had ever packed into the furnaces at once, and they even had to break one of the body's legs to fit them all in. The fire might have started because the bodies were actually blocking the chimney, and the whole crematorium roof ended up burning off, making the crematorium unusable. So what's odd is that David's cremations continued despite this crematorium being burned down. And it turned out that David had quickly and quietly moved his operations to keep the bodies and the money flowing. Air quality engineer for San Bernardino County Air Pollution Control Agency, Richard Wales, began getting complaints of poor air quality in Hesperia in the high desert region, and this was about 70 miles northeast of LA. They complained of something being burned at a place called Oscar Ceramics, which was owned by David Sconce, and he had claimed he was making tiles for NASA.
Oh my God, dude, this guy.
We're building rocket ships out here.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
That black smoke, it's for NASA. Yeah, that's like one thing that I'm like wrapping my head around is the amount of black smoke, the air pollution around this crematorium.
Yucky.
Ugh.
Yeah. And
there's a reason, it's like, you have to do it one at a time. It'd be way too much,
Yeah, and the fact that people are noticing
yeah.
shows like how many bodies you're burning there, that it's like smelling like shit.
Well, and I believe, isn't ash like coming out of the top too?
Some were seeing flames coming top. Like the heat was so high that there were
to
flames
burn that
coming
many
out of
bodies. I mean, they've got this thing on overdrive.
Yeah, yep. One caller specifically complained that noxious black smoke was pouring from the building, and it gave off the, quote, sickeningly sweet smell of burning human flesh. The fire chief tried to calm the caller down, saying, look, this is just a ceramics place. But the caller said, quote, don't tell me they're not burning bodies. I was at the ovens at Auschwitz. The man was apparently a soldier who had liberated the concentration camp during World War II. So that guy was like, I know there are bodies in there. I remember that smell.
That might be the best description of what David was doing.
Yeah.
That quote right there.
Yeah.
Of like, wow. Like that is saying something.
Comparing it to a concentration, the smell too. Yeah. Reportedly, witnesses had seen flames coming from the smokestack, like we were just saying, and smoke billowing from underneath the property's doors.
Oh my God.
Jesus. After this, local government could no longer ignore the ceramics shops.
Man, those damn tiles, man. What's going on?
Yeah. It takes a lot to build rocket ships these days, I guess. So San Bernardino Sheriff's Department officers went out to check on the ceramics shop where they met Johnny outside, and the officers noticed Johnny would not go inside the building. Instead, he sat in his Camaro where he had a small TV and phone line. So this guy's hanging out in the car while smoke is just pouring out of this building. He said that he didn't know what was inside the kilns because someone else had loaded them. Okay, Johnny. Johnny then made a phone call to David while the officers were there, and David told him to try and hide the evidence. But Johnny he just saw the writing on the wall. Yeah. He realized this is the end here.
Yeah.
They caught us.
Well, because he ended up letting the officers inside the shop where they could immediately tell something was wrong by the smell. Oily soot covered the walls and floors. And they also saw barrels filled with prosthetics, which couldn't burn. And then they put the kiln out where bodies were still burning in a blaze. And officers saw flesh and bones that hadn't been fully incinerated. In front of the kilns, officers noticed that David and his crew had cut 4-inch wide trenches that ran from the front of the kilns out to the back of the property. These were used to collect human fat. It collected in puddles not far from the building. That is absolutely disgusting. And after the preliminary investigation, it turned out that David had been using the ceramic shop as a crematorium for 2 months. And they found machinery that ground bones into powder and a sifter to get bones out of the kilns. They also discovered that many of the bodies that were burned there, up to 950 pounds of ash, were victims of the August 31st, 1986 Aeromexico Flight 498 disaster that resulted in 79 deaths. That is insane.
Can you believe this, man?
My God. He has no soul.
Yeah.
No morals.
Yeah, no conscience whatsoever.
David later admitted that using the ceramic shop for burning bodies was a bad choice. You think? He also tried to defend himself, saying that he wanted to make sure his employees could still work even when the Pasadena crematorium was out of commission from the fire. But he said he regretted not getting conditional permits to continue the mass cremations.
So if we're getting this straight, he said he tries to make himself look like a hero. Like, no, people's jobs are on the line. We have to keep these going because I want those people to keep working.
Right.
No, you just want the money to keep flowing.
No. Yeah.
And then 2, he only thought it was a bad choice because he didn't get the permits for it. Not that there's something unethical going on. It's that, I should have got the permits. Whoops. God. Yeah, this guy's terrifying.
Zero care at all. Local journalist David Geary ran a big story on Lamb Funeral Home and their cremations on January 23rd, 1987. After his reporting on the situation, he started getting phone calls from angry people upset that he was disparaging the Lamb family.
Yeah.
As people coming to their defense.
It's like, we've known them for years. They've been in the community since the heyday of the 1920s. We respect them. How dare you?
And meanwhile, the sheriff's department's trying to figure out what specific criminal activity was actually going on. Because this is a very unique case. I'm sure they did a lot of research to try to figure out what is legal, what's not legal. The Lamb Funeral Home operators were first accused of environmental violations. David's company ultimately racked up 180 violations with the San Bernardino County Air Pollution Control Board. Law enforcement then ended up getting a search warrant for the Lamb Funeral Home, and they saw hundreds of bodies wrapped in cardboard inside their cold storage unit. Then they went and searched Lawrence Lamb's house, but didn't find anything. Then they returned to the ceramic shop with shovels and a search warrant. David said this in a local interview. "We've been really misquoted, misunderstood, and just crucified in the press for about a week."
Playing the victim.
Poor David.
Yep.
But as the evidence unfolded, both he and his father, Jerry, were arrested and released on bail. Meanwhile, investigators gathered even more evidence, and thousands of families from all over the area were shocked to discover that their loved ones' bodies were possibly disrespected, abused, and desecrated by the Lamb Funeral Home operations.
Luis Quinones, a driver for the crematorium, felt relieved when the operations were finally uncovered, and he had seen David degrade the bodies, even joke about them, and he once saw him slap them across the face, too. Johnny Polarana was also arrested in connection with the crimes, but he refused to talk to the police, fearing he would be labeled a snitch. He was bailed out the next day. David, Lorianne, and Jerry also refused to talk. They lawyered up very quick. And meanwhile, many locals called into the police and news outlets to say what they knew about the operations. One person told a local journalist that David had joked and bragged about how many corpses he could fit into the ovens and would also compete with other employees in quote-unquote corpse wedging contests. Many previous employees were relieved to be able to talk about what was going on, but many were scared of David, knowing his history of retaliation and intimidation through violence. He had often carried a firearm as well, and he was known as a hothead and was prone to violence and death threats. As for the anonymous employee, he was also arrested, but when he called Lorianne and asked if he was going to get bailed out by the family, she said that he was on his own. Seeing that the family wasn't going to take care of him, the employee agreed to talk openly with the police. A task force was also put together. That goes to show how big this case was, too. And police questioned Skip Jones, a funeral home auditor. He had actually done an audit on the Lamb Funeral Home previous year in 1986. And he had discovered that Lorianne, who was, if you remember, this sweet church-going little lady.
She looks like
so nice.
Some of our grandmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had taken money from about 170 pre-need accounts that were not reported in their official books. She then asked how she could correct it, and Skip told her to report all the money. It was that simple. But she said she would, and then she never did. She misappropriated over $90,000 worth of interest on those 170 accounts. And this was enough for a grand theft charge, which is a felony. Meanwhile, the coroners concluded that David and his cremation operations were harvesting body parts from their victims. Here is where, if this case wasn't already disgusting, here is where the case really, really gets disturbing. So some photographs had been uncovered from the search warrants that showed there were these odd operations being performed on the bodies, and officers first thought they were photographs of some sort of embalming process, but the coroners later confirmed that the photos were of surgical operations to actually peel back skin and remove tissue and even organs. So we are into mad scientist level shit here. Employee Andre Augustine confirmed he had seen a few body parts extracted. He said it was common knowledge that they were harvesting body parts and selling them. David and his small team had been extracting teeth and also using instruments to harvest organs. The cardboard boxes that the bodies were placed in were marked either whole or donor, meaning we burn this one whole, this one we can extract things from. David claimed that a man named George Bristol was responsible for the harvesting. Of course he did. He's going to say, I wasn't a part of this, it was some other guy. He claimed that George was harvesting corneas for Doheny Eye Institute, so David offered him the bodies to operate on inside the funeral home properties. David had formed the Coastal International Eye and Tissue Bank Incorporated, and he established ties with organ donation and medical companies all over the world. They began harvesting and selling skin, bones, eyes, hearts, lungs, and even brains. And this is all on paper, too. He created like a company.
Yes,
it's all there. He technically wasn't selling the body parts, he was billing the companies for his time and labor. So it's just a loophole. And some of these bills ran into the hundreds of thousands.
This is serious money.
Huge money. So even though he was only charging that $55 per cremation, which was still making them a lot of money, you're tacking on the jewelry that they were stealing, the clothing they were stealing, the golden teeth they were stealing, and now just straight up body parts that they were harvesting and selling. So in a 3-month period, the Lamb Funeral Home sold, quote unquote, sold 136, this is 3 months, 136 brains, 145 hearts, and 100 lungs to a medical research school in North Carolina.
Huge money.
This is insane, man.
Yeah, and again, they don't have permission to do this.
No, they do not.
They are just doing it.
Yep.
Victims' family members like Nancy Hathorne, whose father was Kurt George Wilhelm, were shocked to discover that the ashes they received weren't their loved ones. And to make it even worse, Nancy's family was informed by law enforcement that her father's body parts had also been harvested, including his brain and eyes. That would upset anybody.
Yeah.
At no point did the family or victim ever agree to that. And many families across the region, as you can imagine, were extremely angry and upset at the Lamb Funeral Home. Another victim, Nancy Jacob, had a husband named Jurgen who found out on the local news. He said it felt like getting hit over the head with a baseball bat. Nancy was a high school English teacher who loved her job, and Jurgen was in the restaurant business. Nancy suddenly passed away at 45 years old from cancer, and Jurgen took her remains to Lamb Funeral Home, and they cremated her ashes and harvested her organs. Jurgen said he would have never agreed to that.
Right.
Many in the community were also shocked, not only by the horrific operations behind Lamb Funeral Home, but because they had seen Lori-Ann Lamb as this religious, kind-hearted, trustworthy, caring person. And in hindsight, this might have just been a facade. This just is her fake mask she wore around. Luis Quinones, one of the drivers for the crematorium, once picked up a body from a family home, and he got a call from Lori-Ann. She told him to check if the body was still warm. Then she told him to lift up the eyelids and see if they were wet or dry. She said that if they were dry, he needed to take the bottle from the glove compartment of the truck and put a few drops in each of the eyes. And this became the standard procedure. And Lori-Ann would continuously check in to make sure the bodies were still adequate for harvesting.
Right.
So there you go. She wouldn't be doing this if she didn't know about the harvesting and wasn't a part of it.
Yeah, it is implied that she was preserving the eyes so they could harvest the corneas or the whole thing,
right.
Sell them off.
It was
complicit.
Yeah,
she's
very complicit in this illegal operation going on here. It was also reported that Lori-Ann had kept a compartment of ashes in her office, and police actually found a note calculating how much ash to put in each receptacle. It said, man, 5 to 7 pounds of ash. Woman, 3.5 to 5 pounds. Children, 11 to 22 ounces. And babies, 1 envelope. That says a lot right there, too. She's just scooping ash in there. An eyewitness confirmed that Lori-Ann was using the collection of ashes in her office to fill envelopes marked as containing infants' remains, which is just so fucked up.
Yeah.
Because that is traumatic as it is for any parent. And to find out that you're just getting random people's ashes instead of your own babies.
Yep. And it's the woman who is,
yes,
proposing
of
that
course,
she's this
honey.
sweet, religious.
God bless their soul.
Yeah.
Probably telling you all this sweet stuff.
Yeah. And good memory. Because if you remember, her dad was like, you should take over the family business because you're so good talking to these family members. It seems like you empathize with them and you comfort them. Now, this lady is filling envelopes with tiny bits of ash to then lie to people's faces that is their baby infant who had passed away.
That's diabolical.
That is diabolical.
For sure.
Yep.
Lori-Ann tried to say she didn't know anything. I don't know anything about these operations, honey.
Yeah, okay.
No idea. But according to an employee, she was the one giving the orders. Very clear. Turns out Jerry wasn't in the clear either. The crematorium driver, Lewis, said, he once saw Lori-Ann's husband, Jerry Sconce, extracting teeth from a body. And he told Lewis, that's how we can afford to pay you what we pay you. Which that sounds very legitimate to me. That doesn't seem like just some made up statement.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Also, yeah, great defense, right?
Yeah.
And it's also like, hey, you're taking this money too, and this is how the business runs, man.
So don't try to fuck me over because you're taking this money.
Yeah. And reportedly, we know that Jerry was also the one writing the amounts.
Yep.
He was kind of the one who was like, make sure you put this amount into each receptacle.
It appeared that Lorianne, Jerry, and David were all complicit in what was actually going on behind the scenes at Lamb Funeral Home. According to David, his parents had been doing mass cremations and extracting teeth long before he ever got into the business.
Yeah, so it's not just me.
Yeah,
it's my
which
parents
is like, which, as you know, the parents are involved. So yeah, it kind of seems like maybe this was going on for generations.
Sure. But also, it's like, it's not just me.
Totally.
Yeah, you know,
he's like, this is just learned behavior.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This is what the family does.
Yeah. Every excuse this guy can get, he's going to take it. So beyond the operations within the funeral home, investigators discovered the assaults and potential murders that David had ordered against other funeral home directors, including, if you remember, Tim Waters, who mysteriously died after getting lunch with David. So outside of this crazy funeral home bubble of the cremation, the ethically barren operations that were going there, highly illegal, we're now getting into like murder territory potentially. Because would you really put it past him at this rate?
No.
Knowing his character?
Not at all. He has no issues with death.
No, yeah.
Or
he
dead
sees
people
as just rotting meat.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That's it. They also discovered that the night Tim Waters was assaulted, a neighbor saw two men sitting outside of his business, eating and dumping their trash out of their car. This is crazy, but the police had originally kept this trash and they even stored it in evidence. It sat for 2.5 years before police pulled it again, and they pulled the prints from the carton of milk that belonged to former crematorium driver Danny Galambos. So they arrested him and questioned him. He gave them all the information about the Tim Waters assault, and he even confessed to police that David Sconce told him that he had poisoned Tim Waters. The medical examiner had ruled it a heart attack, but did not do a toxicology report. Luckily, they kept some tissue samples, and in 1987, the DA ordered the samples to be analyzed, and in the new toxicology report, they discovered oleander components, which comes from a type of flowering bush that can be found all over Southern California. When consumed, oleander can cause things like irregular or slow heartbeats, low blood pressure, and general heart weakness, among many other symptoms. The murder of Tim Waters was not added to the list of initial charges against David, but the DA was still trying to build a case against him at the time. A fellow inmate at the time, Scott Brome, said that David confessed to commingling the human ash and also researched how to kill people without leaving any signs of a murder. Allegedly, David also told Scott that he had put something in someone's spaghetti at a restaurant. The crematorium driver, Lewis, also told the DA that David had a book of different formulas for poisons. His brother-in-law, Brad, also confirmed that this book was in David's possession. It was called The Poor Man's James Bond by Kurt Saxon. Brad said David was intrigued by the book, but didn't believe he would ever do anything like that. There is a section of the book that specifically talks about oleanders and plant-based poisons. According to two employees, David had spoken to them about oleander specifically. Police also connected David to two other deaths. Ron Jordan, in 1985, worked for him as a driver. He had seen what David was doing in the crematorium, so he just outright quit. And good on this guy for having a conscience. We know that there are some people out there that saw this type of activity and said, hell no, I'm not going to be a part of this. He told David, though, that he wouldn't tell anyone about what he saw. He had plans of being a firefighter and just to move on, but only 2 weeks after quitting the crematorium work, he was found dead by hanging. Investigators ruled it a suicide. Many still had doubts that Ron would ever commit suicide. He had also been overheard saying things like, "If anything happens to me, look for David." But David was never charged with a crime regarding Ron Jordan. Meanwhile, David was charged with 37 felony and misdemeanor counts and was given a $500,000 bail. Later, this was raised to 68 counts.
37 felony and misdemeanor counts.
And then 68 at the end of it.
Like, we got to get this guy on everything. And pressure from the victims, of course. I mean, people are outraged at what David's been doing.
Yeah.
And it turns out that David had a long list of instances of him threatening to kill people. To no surprise to any of us, right? Yeah. According to Danny Galambos, David asked him if he would ever kill someone for money. He also told someone he would hire someone to kill 2 gay men who were, quote unquote, against him. He also threatened to kill a witness. Another time he said he would have someone shot for $500 and then burn their remains. According to court testimony, many of his employees feared him because he threatened to kill them, which makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, that they kind of, once they got in with him, they were kind of stuck.
Right.
There's no easy way out.
And seeing what just happened to Ron Jordan.
Right.
Maybe that was like a sign to the other employees too. Like, let's say David did murder him,
Totally. On top of this, he had made plans to kill his competitors. Apparently, 2 men told investigators that David had offered them $10,000 to kill Ely Estefan, the owner of the Cremation Society of California. David had wanted to buy the business, but Ely got to it first. In 1985, Ely was separated from his wife, Cindy Strunk, and Cindy worked at the Cremation Society of California, and she began dating David's brother-in-law, Brad Sallard, that May. Ely served her divorce papers in June, and David offered her the funeral home's lawyer. They also discussed a $250,000 life insurance policy on her husband, where she was the beneficiary. The witnesses had also seen Ely push Cindy down a flight of stairs at work. A day later, David asked his right-hand man, Johnny, if he would kill Ely for $10,000, and David also referred to Ely using a racial slur. Johnny declined and did not take David's offer seriously. David also contacted Bob Garcia and offered him $10,000 to kill Ely. Apparently, he told David that he would do it or he would find someone else to do it. He later contacted Herbert Dutton, a neighbor and ex-convict, to murder Ely for $5,000. That same night, Bob and Herbert drove to Ely's house. They discussed whether to blow up his car or shoot him on the freeway, and they settled on explosives because Herbert had explosives and no one would have to pull the trigger. They intended to plant the bomb, run a wire to it from 3 houses away, and wait for Ely to get inside. They talked about the murder for another 3 weeks, but eventually David called it off. Herbert had been arrested on a parole violation for heroin abuse. Meanwhile, Cindy had seen David scoping out Ely with binoculars. She then feared for her life and the life of Ely. She immediately left Brad Sallard, and Brad told her not to tell anyone because he wouldn't believe her. And if she did say anything, she would have to watch her back. Adding on to David's growing list of charges, he was also charged with conspiracy to commit murder. David also later admitted to writing, "Lewis will die" on the wall of his jail cell during his preliminary hearings. Walt Lewis was the deputy DA, and David insisted it was part of a larger message, intended as a joke, and that the rest of the message was erased by jail snitches. He said the full message was this: Lewis will die of AIDS. David said, "It was stupid, but it was funny."
Yeah, was it funny?
Yeah.
That's not funny.
4 inmates later testified that David had asked them to kill Walt Lewis, of course. And I believe all of it.
Yeah,
I
same.
honestly do with it.
I do too.
In 1988, David's preliminary hearings lasted 6 months, the longest in Pasadena history. Countless witnesses were brought forward, many of them were former employees and the next of kin of the victims. David denied any wrongdoing, and he tried to put on the same type of act his mother did. Of whenever the media came around, he's like, I just don't understand why.
Yeah, we're misunderstood.
I have nothing to hide. Yeah, we're just misunderstood. Meanwhile, everyone was telling his wife at the time, Barbara, that it was all going to be all right. Initially, she was in disbelief about the charges, but when she heard about the potential murders, she couldn't ignore it any longer. She was also running out of money, and when she asked the Lamb and Sconce family for money, they told her to go on welfare. Considering all the evidence against David, his case went to the Superior Court, where he would be tried separately from his father and mother.
So during his parents' trial, Lorianne was often seen crying in court. Aww.
Of course.
But many just thought she was acting, And I kind of agree. It seems like she knew how to act really well while doing highly
She used that
things.
to her advantage.
Yep. Both Jerry and Lori-Ann blamed everything on their son, David. David later said that they were a part of everything that went on, but in court, he said that his parents didn't know anything. The jury was not convinced. The evidence showed that Jerry and Lori-Ann were absolutely complicit in what was going on. They had even changed some of the wording on the documents that families had to sign. One line said it gave them the right to, quote unquote, remove tissue. Very general thing, right?
Yeah.
And they used that to say, like,
to harvest your body.
Exactly. Plus, Lori-Ann forged some of the next of kin's signatures. Expert witnesses identified Lori-Ann's handwriting and even times when she misspelled victims' names. So she's forging the signatures on these forms so that they could harvest these bodies and completely abuse them before cremating them. Totally complicit. In the end, Jerry Sconce was found guilty of 1 count of conspiracy to remove parts and 1 count of misappropriation of $100,000 in trust account money. The judge sentenced him to 3 years and 8 months in prison. He ended up serving his full term in prison. Lori-Ann Sconce was found guilty of 9 charges, including unlawfully authorizing the removal of eyes, hearts, lungs, and brains from bodies before cremation, as well as 3 counts of forging customer signatures on organ donor and cremation authorization forms. She also received 3 years and 8 months in prison, and she also served her full term. Judge John Odekirk said, "They did it literally to steal the hearts of the dead and break the hearts of the living. They were conning the bereaved to make money." It's estimated that their actions affected nearly 20,000 families.
That's crazy.
The California Funeral Board revoked the Lamb Funeral Home's license in February 1989, but a new license was issued at the same time, and this time, Lawrence Lamb's sons, Bruce and Kirk, who were Lori-Ann's brothers, took over the business, and reportedly, they had not been involved in any of the previous operations. They changed the name to Pasadena Funeral Home, and today the original Lamb Funeral Home property includes tours and even an escape room inspired by the dark history of the business, which I feel like that's a bit ethically compromised here. But Lawrence Lamb ended up passing away in 1991 of a brain tumor at 85. Jerry passed away in 2019 at the age of 85. Lori-Ann is in her late 80s and leading a quiet life out of the spotlight.
But as for David's trial, his judge dismissed many of the charges against him, which was kind of interesting, and the prosecutors were not happy about that.
Yeah.
Many argue that the Lamb and Sconce's family's privilege, they upstanding citizens in the community, rich, well-connected, maybe helped them quite a bit in these trials, which I kind of tend to agree with. But according to David, he claimed that the charges against him came from the bigwigs in the funeral industry, acting like his family wasn't part of the wealthy elites, obviously. He also denounced the funeral industry as, quote, the most infighting, backbiting, rumor-spreading, lecherous, treacherous people you'd ever want to meet in your life, 20% of them. Speak for yourself.
I know. I think you're included in that. Right?
The judge also dismissed his murder conspiracy case we mentioned earlier, but told David that if prosecutors successfully appealed, he would have the option of pleading guilty and getting a sentence of lifetime probation in return. Which I would love to know more about how that all played out, because that seems like some privilege or some personal connections to the judge there.
Yeah, right. And David does come off as like a rich kid who's never really paid for anything in his life. No consequences whatsoever. Dating back to when he broke into his girlfriend's house and nothing happened.
Slap on the wrist.
I'll just return the stereo equipment.
Come on, man.
Shame on you.
Come sit in the pew with us at church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, to nobody's surprise, that's exactly what happened a year later in 97. He pleaded guilty to murder conspiracy and then was put on probation for life. Probation for life for murder conspiracy charge.
Yeah.
In September 1989, David pleaded guilty to 21 charges against him, including mutilating corpses, conducting mass cremations, and hiring people to beat up 3 rival morticians. He faced 11 years if the case went to trial, but he was only given 5 years in prison for just pleading guilty.
Crazy.
5 years. That is it for all of this. That is nuts.
If that doesn't scream privilege and connections,
yeah.
I don't know what does. Fuck this guy.
Might as well just got away with it. That's nothing.
Really.
But while this is going on, prosecutors are really, really trying hard to build a case against David for the murder of Tim Waters. And they objected to a plea deal. If found guilty, he would have potentially faced the death penalty.
Whoa.
In 1990, David pleaded not guilty to the murder of Tim Waters. Dr. Jack Henlon, an expert witness from Cornell, testified Tim's body was exhumed, but the tissue they tested was very, very badly decayed. Because what was kind of weird about this was that the tissue from the organs was just stored in plastic bags placed beside Tim Waters' body in an above-ground mausoleum.
Yes, kind of like disintegrating and rotting there.
Yeah, they kind of described it as like chocolate pudding.
Ugh,
which it's just a goop. They used newer technology called a tandem mass spectrometer to look for oleander, and their tests did not detect any. Since this created a reasonable doubt, the case was dismissed.
So if you remember, the old toxicology report did show the traces of oleander, but this new report didn't. But it's like, was this accurate because it was just this decaying stuff in this bag? Who knows?
It's possible. Despite this, many, including Dr. Jack Henlon, believe that David was guilty, considering the circumstantial evidence and, of course, David's character. To this day, David maintains that he barely knew Tim Waters, saying that he only met him once. Doesn't mean he couldn't have killed him.
Right, yep. So after all this, David's crimes still didn't end here. When Jerry, Lorianne, and David were all free, they all wanted to go back to living this just normal life. David returned to his family and his then wife, Barbara, who was still around, and got a job driving buses that transported people to Laughlin. And you know what? He just couldn't keep it together even then. He began forging his own bus tickets to scam the bus company so the money would go straight to his pocket. It did.
This just says,
man.
It confirms all of our thoughts about David.
Yeah. He's just a scumbag.
He's just a piece of shit.
Yeah.
He only cares about money. Money is what he loves.
And it's almost like he's like addicted to scamming people out of money. Like going around doing unethical things just to get a little more money.
And I think he's like one of those guys who truly thinks that he's just smarter than everybody and he can beat the system and it's all out to get him anyway. Yeah. So why not take advantage of it?
Yeah. Even one of his jailmates, we'll later get into, said that he got the impression that David just thought he was the smartest guy in the room, no matter where he was. Yeah. He just thought he was better than everybody else. It didn't take long before he was caught.
Not that smart. He gets caught every time.
This guy's a moron, really. He had apparently printed 400 fake tickets and sold many before being charged with a Class 2 felony. According to Barbara, Jerry and Lorianne even knew about the forgeries. I feel like there's a lot of enabling going on within this family. It's like, David, you're not doing anything wrong. We're so proud of you, regardless of everything.
Good job scamming, son. We're proud of you.
Bus tickets. God. And
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah. And here's the crazy part. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, which that's what he got sentenced for.
What do you see, the same judge?
Stuff. Like, what?
But 5 years for just scamming bus tickets. And meanwhile, he got 5 years for all this horrific
organs
shit.
And what the hell? He was required to pay $358.
What a punishment.
Yeah. David and Barbara finally divorced while David was incarcerated again. And according to David, she found another boyfriend while he was in prison.
Oh, poor David.
Oh, man. So heartbreaking. He got out after serving half of his sentence, and he kept violating his probation over the years. In 2012, he was sentenced to 5 years probation in Montana on a federal charge of being a felon in possession of a firearm.
Which he's got an excuse for that, of course.
And he's like, I never shot it or whatever.
I'm not much of a gun guy.
Yeah, right. Allegedly, he stole a rifle and then resold it. But according to David, his neighbor gave him the rifle and he held on to it to protect his pets from wolves. He was then extradited to California for a slew of other parole violations, including the gun charge. And he says, he's like, I never even fired the weapon, whatever. This guy's just an idiot.
It's like, I didn't do anything. These stupid rules.
Yeah, what?
Why do we have these laws?
Yeah. So in 2013, he pleaded guilty to violating his lifelong probation from the conspiracy plea deal. If you remember, that was back in like 1997. And he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. During the sentencing, LA's Superior Court Judge Dorothy Shubin said that it had been made clear that Sconce, quote, could not have a gun for any purpose, and that possessing one was something Mr. Sconce willingly chose to do. Right? It's almost like he likes breaking the rules, I feel like.
I think he kind of gets a rush from it. Yeah.
David said in court, I did something I shouldn't have done. I have to take responsibility for what I've done.
How about all the other shit you did, too?
It's like the gun
Where's
charge.
the apology for that? We've not seen any remorse or apologies for all the other shit.
God.
But, of course, David Sconce, he got granted parole in 2023. Mm-hmm. And he even admitted he was shocked that they let him out. If anybody ever says, I'm shocked they let me out, you put his ass back in prison. Yeah. He needs to stay there.
Oh, my God.
Former inmate Scott Brome, who spoke with David constantly in prison, said that David had excuses for absolutely everything, and he always thought he was the smartest person in the room, and I'm sure a lot of people did not like him in prison.
Oh, I can imagine.
David still blames his gopher hole football injury for changing the entire trajectory of his life, which that is just hilarious to me. That he still goes back, he's like, well, that damn gopher hole
that led to everything.
I would have went on and played football and been a good guy.
Yeah.
Good upstanding guy, but goddamn the gopher hole put me on a path to destruction.
That was it.
What's interesting, though, is that at the end of all of this, David has no relationship with his family. He says, I've been abandoned.
Yeah, wow. So
poor
dramatic.
David.
Yeah.
He had maintained a relationship with his mother, Lorianne, up until his father passed in 2019, but then they stopped communicating. I wonder what the story is there. If it's maybe, I have a feeling that it's like there's anger on David's side towards his mother and his father.
Sure.
And maybe he like went at her really hard and like blamed her for him going to prison and all this. His mother was just finally sick of his shit.
Yeah.
It was like, leave me alone.
Yeah. I mean, I don't
know. That's just speculating, but
I mean, he seems like a huge piece of shit, a very just tumultuous and toxic person to be around. So I can only imagine that
you don't want that energy around you. Yeah. And at the end of the docuseries, David implied that he was possibly involved in 3 murders. This is how it ends.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. But yeah, he kind of starts alluding to
killing people.
Yeah, but I can't tell you it on camera.
Yeah.
You know, we have to do it off the record here. But it's like, it's hard to believe him at this point. But I don't know. It's interesting because an anonymous employee also believed David might have murdered 3 people as well.
True.
Very specific about the number 3. So it's interesting that David also came up with that same number.
Yeah.
But David's never been charged with any other crimes, and who knows what David's up to these days, or what he's doing. But
I just love that it was all the gopher hole. It was that damn gopher hole.
Set him on a path that he never wanted to be on.
And that's a really, I think that shows just how delusional he is, or just how deep he will go to convince himself or convince others that, look, it's not my fault. It's the gopher hole. It was, my parents had been doing this for a while. Like, he never takes responsibility. He said that he took responsibility for that one gun charge, but I also feel like that was his lawyer saying, like, you have to say this to hopefully maybe lighten your sentence or something like that.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, what about all the victims of the Lamb funeral home?
20,000 families potentially?
Yeah, that's a huge deal. Well, 6 law firms filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of the families of 16,000 people who received cremation services from David Sconce. The suit accused 100 mortuaries of sending bodies to David Sconce when they should have been suspicious of the low-cost, high-volume operation, which I agree.
Yeah.
They knew better. They had to have known. This should have been shut down long before it got to this point.
Yeah.
Because, of course, $55, when it sounds too good to be true.
It is.
It is. Several funeral directors defended themselves, saying that the Lamb family name was trusted in the industry. And the lawsuit was ultimately settled in February 1992 for $15.4 million. I wonder how much of that money actually
ended up making it to the families.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Darlin Branton Stoa, whose father was cremated by David in 1986, said, quote, "David Sconce, he's just a monster. He's evil." But even though there is still abuse in the end-of-life service industry, especially when it comes to cremations, a massive amount of regulations were established after the fallout of the Lamb Funeral Home abuse scandal. There are now stricter cremation laws and more clarity and transparency in the decision-making process for next of kin. It is also legal in California for the cemetery board to make unannounced inspections of funeral homes and cremation properties, which this all just seems like should have been there.
Should have been, yeah.
But it was just not really regulated until this happened. And unfortunately, this stuff still happens to this day. We haven't seen it to this magnitude in a long time. Although I will say this story reminded me of one from about a year ago here in Colorado.
Oh, yeah. I saw this when I was looking up stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. On my other podcast, Mile Higher, we did a whole episode on this story.
Oh, did you?
It was John and Carrie Halliford. They had 189 bodies just decomposing inside of their funeral home.
What was their excuse?
Well, their return to nature funeral home is like their whole thing. They didn't really have a good excuse. They just kind of again, their operations were getting too big, and I think they weren't doing what they said they were doing, and bodies were just sitting for way too long because people were smelling it from the outside in the community.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and they ended up getting arrested, which I should look it up. I wonder what ended up happening with them. In June of this year, the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Colorado announces that John M. Halford, 45 of Colorado Springs, was sentenced to 240 months in federal prison in order to pay $1 million basically in restitution for a conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Yeah, he owned the Return to Nature Funeral Home in Colorado Springs with his wife and mishandled at least 190 bodies over 4 years and defrauded the Small Business Administration through fraudulent COVID-19 loan applications. Yeah. According to the plea agreement, from as early as September 2019 through October 2023, Halford failed to cremate or bury at least 190 bodies, despite having collected more than $130,000 from grieving families for funeral services that were never provided. Yeah. So ensuring proper, disposing of the remains, Halford allowed bodies to accumulate in various states of decay and decomposition in the funeral home's facility, and he took steps to hide the nature of his activities by blocking windows and doors and restricting access to the building.
God, these people have no conscience.
Yeah, so he filed death certificates in the state of Colorado that falsely listed the method disposition as cremation or burial. So another fraudster.
Yeah.
But he would provide family members with urns filled with dry concrete mix. So yeah, a year ago, still some bad apples out there in the industry, although the majority, good people. We need morticians. We need funeral homes.
Sure.
We need people to actually care about and take pride in their work and aren't just trying to scam people.
Yeah, and respect, obviously the people who have died, but also the families who are going through that.
Right. I feel like it's a major responsibility, one that should be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And treated with respect and care. And unfortunately, as is in every industry, there's bad eggs, bad apples that are just there to make money. And I think in David's case, I think there's a sick part of him.
Yeah.
There's
like a joy to it.
I think he kind of liked it. Yeah. I think he kind of liked the power he had over people and certainly like the money.
Yeah. To desecrate such a process, though, I mean, like going back in human history, right? Like the burial process goes way, way back. Traditions,
right? Yeah,
connections to what our spirit is, what our soul is, into our faith, et cetera, and just to completely desecrate all of that for money. It's the worst. It's the worst. This guy's a piece of shit. I wouldn't put it past him that he would either pay for people to be murdered or just murder people himself. It seems like
yeah. I think he really thought he was building this like empire and that he was going to be able to keep this going for as long as he wanted to, make it as big of an operation as he possibly could.
Yeah.
I think he got carried away with it. I think he got in too deep where he got really, really sloppy and just got completely consumed by the money.
Yeah.
And I think the parents did too.
Yeah. And it feels kind of like a Sopranos.
Totally.
Like
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, this
stuff.
has got to be a show. Like this is like a plot line for, it reminds me a lot, similar and dissimilar ways to Righteous Gemstones in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of like this, like we got to build this big family empire and at whatever cost. And then it just becomes more and more criminal as time goes on and not about the actual service that they got into. You know, it's a service-based business and the service goes out the window.
Yeah.
Because it all becomes about money and wealth. And
there's a great scene in The Sopranos where his two kids, Meadow and AJ, are talking about like, oh, what does dad do? He's like, he's in waste management.
Yeah.
And Meadow's like, he's not in waste management, man. Like, get your head out of your ass.
Yeah.
Like, dad's in the mob.
It's like, how long are we going to believe this? Yeah, because they lived in a beautiful home.
Yep.
Everybody knew that they did. They knew the kind of money that they had. And it's just wild. It went on for so long.
Yeah, right?
Before it got shut down.
Yeah, I think it was, 6 or 7 years?
Yeah.
David was doing the cremation operations.
It's just the visuals of like what the crematoriums were like.
Yeah.
Or like the human remains and human fat out. It's just like, oh my God.
Completely disgusting.
Just did not care. No regard for human life.
Yeah.
Which, makes you wonder, what is he really capable of?
Yeah. And I think that, the employees we were talking about, if they were just like manipulated into it. And I can agree to some degree, but at some point, I don't know, with like Johnny, where, you're doing the drainage ditches of human fat and you're piling a bunch of bodies in a ceramics place that has no permits. You have to ask yourself, and you can't even stay within the building because it's so disgusting inside. I feel like if you don't realize at that moment, I feel like that if you watch the docuseries, I think it's more like they're free because they all ended up kind of turning on David to some degree.
And some of them, it was kind of interesting to see, they still seem like they don't really feel that bad about like what they did.
Right.
They're kind of like, oh, this is what we were told to do. And it was kind of interesting that they're still not really like torn up about it. There seems to be really, amongst anybody who operated within the Lamb Funeral Home, to be any sort of remorse or feelings of apology, or there's just none of that there.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is what we did.
My guess is that they probably justify it to themselves. They didn't hurt any living person.
Right.
Which is just, it's sick. It's a sick justification.
Yeah. Except they did. The families, right?
True.
You did hurt
but they didn't
people.
physically hurt.
Right.
Yeah. They don't care about scamming people.
Yeah.
That's their MO.
Yeah. That one guy who is anonymous in the docuseries, he said he's like, oh, I kind of want to protect myself from David. But I was like, that doesn't make sense because David would know who you are.
Yeah.
So
I know.
He knows. So I think actually he just didn't want to admit it, that he did feel shame and guilt and he didn't want to show his face in the docuseries. That was kind of what I took from the end of that, where I was like, you just don't want people to know who you are because you are embarrassed and ashamed of what you
I'm
did.
sure people online went after everybody involved with that because people are angry. It's messed up. What they did is completely wrong and they knew it.
And now David's free and he's just hanging out.
Who knows what old David's up to. But yeah, what a wild one. I mean, we talk about death a lot on the show, and it's just it's a different sort of lens to look at things through, like after death care and dealing with the dead.
Yeah.
And just finding that there's monsters that lurk in that area as well.
Yeah.
It's just everywhere. All facets of life. There is a monster exploiting it in some way, for personal gain. So yeah, definitely let us know your thoughts. I'm curious if anybody out there who listens is in the funeral industry. Are you a mortician? Do you work? Are you a funeral director? I'm curious to know what your thoughts were on this story, or if you watched the Mortician documentary, and curious to know just over your overall thoughts of David Sconce. How prevalent is this kind of abuse in the industry? It seems like it's the minority, but let us know if you have any personal stories or thoughts, opinions on this. Definitely be interested to take a look. But yeah, thank you for joining us as always. Appreciate you being here. If found this episode interesting, drop us a follow, subscribe, depending on where you're watching or listening. We appreciate it. But that's gonna be it for us today. We'll see you guys next week, back with another one. Until then, lights out, everybody.